Hey everyone, Josh here. So we're back at the CJAA videos here I had a little short break from them. But we're getting started on this new one here that I bought for my wife. So we got it with a bad turbo, so that's the first thing I was going to start on, was get the turbo good so that I can test it to make sure the rest of the car is good and the engine's good. So I've already done a video on this a couple weeks or months ago. Also the CJAA, that turbo shaft broke and made it no start, so this issue was identical on this one, but this turbo failed spectacularly. So we've got some big issues I've got to work through, so we're just going to show some differences and how we're going to fix it. Okay, so we've got this turbo, which was off the other CJAA. Same type of deal, the hot side. So what's happening was that wheel's getting pushed out and restricting airflow. The cold side, the nut was loose, but it stayed on the shaft and everything stayed together nicely. So that one, slapped a new turbo on. We were good to go. But this one over here, that's a different story. So I had oil pouring out of the charge pipe when I took it off. So that's a good indication that the seal was leaking oil in. So to prevent a runaway, you should really drain the intercooler. Same kind of deal, but the cold side, that's a different story. So that's all jammed in there, and you can see fins are broken off. It's just not having a good time. So under the car here, I pulled this pipe off, so intercooler to charge pipe to the turbo. There's very little to no oil in there, but there's chunks of turbo. So that's not a good sign. So there's chunks of turbo all into the intercooler, at least on this side. After the intercooler, I'm not seeing any in here. I'm finding a bunch of water from the low pressure EGR. But yeah, very little oil and no chunks of turbo. But I still need to get this intercooler flushed out and get it nice and clean. So I am putting this thing into service mode, or service position, because I'm doing the condenser. It's all kind of rotted away. So the intercooler is going to come off at the same time and it's going to get flushed out with diesel. So I'll do a separate video on getting this into service position, and then I'll have the intercooler off and we'll kind of pick up from there. Okay, so we're in service position now. I've got the turbo installed. So I did a few little modifications to it. So I did another video on that if you want to check that out. So a few things I learned there. So this top pipe here, I got it all cleaned out. There's a little bit of material in there, not too bad. But this dampener, it's got all this baffling inside. So it's going to be quite hard to get this cleaned out. So what I did was I cut and used one open and took all this baffling out. So we're going to cut this old one apart and see how much material actually gets stuck inside of it. Okay, so we've got it knocked part of the way apart here. So I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick that up, but there's a lot of junk on this side, which would be the turbo side. The outlet also has, it's all fairly small stuff, but nothing too aggressive. But yeah, if you're cleaning everything out, you don't want all that to go through. And then while I was looking, I had some oil spill on me. That's a big chunk of a turbo fin. So that came out of the outlet piece. The same thing. Definitely gonna want to definitely clean that out good if you want to keep that stock. That's gonna be a pain, but a good wash and diesel or something might get that all out. But it's a bit of a interesting setup in there, so whatever you decide to do there, make sure it's good and clean. Okay, so it's time to get this intercooler flushed out. So I'm going to use some diesel, pour it through the intercooler outlet, and then drain it out of the inlet, because the majority of the junk's down in this end, so I don't want to try and force anything back or in here. So yeah, we're going to throw a couple liters in there, swish it around, try and cut some of that oil, and then drain it into the turkey pan there. Now we're going to do that a few times to try and make sure we have it all out. And then as far as what to use to cut the oil, I'm going to use diesel, kind of help flush it out. I would recommend against using brake clean or gas, because even though the liquid might flash off, there's still the vapors inside. And if you're really quick on getting this all back together, I'd probably put money on it that your first start you might have a runaway situation, because that's happened to me once. So recommend against brake clean and gas. Somebody recommended soap and water, which I guess that would make sense, because all you need to do is cut that oil that's making all the metallic stuff stick to everything. So a bunch of soap and water would work as well, but diesel's here and I can just use it in my diesel heater, so may as well. Free diesel, I guess. Okay, so first rinse is done. This was a clean container. So yeah, there's some pretty big chunks that made it down here. There's gonna be a bunch down here yet too. So yeah, we're gonna want to make sure we get this flushed out nicely. So I'm gonna drain that into a clean container and then get this clean again, and then I can rinse that and kind of see what I get out the second try here. Okay, so here's rinse number 2. Still got some pretty fine chunks of the turbo coming out, so dump that, clean the container up, and then I guess do another flush yet. There might be, if I can get most of that oil out, I think I will probably flush this out with water and then make sure I get it drained really well. That way I know I've got 100% of the oil out, 100% of the chunks of turbo out. The reason I didn't really want to start with water is then you end up with a bunch of watery, oily mess that you've got to contain. Okay, flush number 3. No big chunks anymore, but there's a lot of little fine little stuff. So I think I'm gonna rinse it out with soap and water here now and then make sure I let it drain really good. All right, so if you look inside, I'm not sure if it'll pick it up. You can just see down in there, the channels are quite large actually, like where the air actually flows through. So I've got a feeling we can get it really clean. It's just a matter of getting everything flushed out good. So we're gonna use some water and lots of soap. All right, so I think I'm gonna end this here. So I've got that intercooler fairly clean. The water coming out's clean. I didn't see any more chunks coming out when I was washing it with water, so I'm just gonna let it drain out, make sure it airs it out pretty good. Fair bit of moisture gets introduced with the low pressure EGR. So if there's a little bit in there, I'm not too concerned. But yeah, I've ran the turbo here for a bit. I'm gonna put some more runtime on it. I'm gonna throw a bit of cleaner in here and run it with the rad bypass and just make sure that all the scale and stuff's out of this engine before putting it back together. I might gently rinse out this bottom hose here yet when I go to do the thermostat, but I'm not too concerned. I don't think much made it through the other end here. So yeah, that's just gonna be the end of that, and just gonna make sure I stress, if you have a turbo failure, make sure you clean everything out good. So hopefully this video helped, and thanks for watching.